All right, today we're digging into the incredible, kind of secret world of Canada's wild orchids. And I want you to forget everything you think you know about them, because, as you're about to see, these flowers are way tougher, more widespread, and honestly, a lot more cunning than you can even imagine.
So when I say the word orchid, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, right, it's something like this. A really fragile, exotic flower, probably sitting in a pot on a windowsill, and it needs very specific care. It just feels tropical, delicate, and let's be honest, a little bit high maintenance.
Well, the orchids native to Canada completely shatter that stereotype. First off, they're all terrestrial, which just means they grow in the ground, not on trees. And they are unbelievably tough, thriving in this huge range of environments. In fact, you can find native orchids in every single one of our provinces and territories. No exceptions.
Okay, so let's get a real sense of just how diverse this family is. We are talking about a massive variety of species, and they're adapted to literally everything from the lush, warm forests of southern Ontario all the way up to the harsh, frozen landscapes of the high Arctic.
So what's the grand total? 77. It's an incredible number, isn't it? Canada is home to 77 distinct species of native orchids. And these aren't just a few weird little plants. This is a massive, diverse family hiding in plain sight, from the famous showy lady slippers to the almost invisible coral roots.
So how do they do it? How do they possibly survive in such varied and often difficult conditions? Well, the secret to the orchid's success, it isn't found in its beautiful flowers. It's in a hidden partnership that's happening right under our feet.
See, to understand this, you have to start with the orchid's biggest problem. Their seeds are microscopic, like dust. And unlike, say, a bean or a sunflower seed, they have zero stored energy. There's no packed lunch to get them started. So on its own, an orchid seed is completely helpless. It will just die.
And this is where the magic happens. For an orchid to even be born, it needs a partner, a very specific type of soil fungus called a mycorrhizal fungus, which forms this vast underground web, has to find that tiny seed. The fungus literally connects to it and starts pumping it full of nutrients, acting as a life support system. Only with that outside energy source can the little orchid embryo finally wake up and start to grow.
Now, some orchids take this dependency to the absolute extreme. They're what's known as mycoheterotrophs, which is just a fancy word for a plant that gets all of its food from fungi for its entire life. The coral root orchids are the perfect example. They have no leaves, no chlorophyll, they can't make their own food. They are essentially beautiful parasites living off that underground fungal network.
So, once an orchid has used its fungal buddy to grow up, it faces its next huge challenge: getting pollinated. And just like their germination strategy, their approach to reproduction is incredibly clever, and it often involves some pretty elaborate deception.
Canadian orchids usually follow one of two paths. Some of them, like a lot of the fringed orchids, play fair. They offer a reward, sweet nectar, to attract pollinators. But a huge number of them are tricksters. They use these vibrant colors and amazing scents to lure insects in, promising a meal but providing absolutely nothing in return. It's a total bait and switch.
The famous lady's slipper orchid is an absolute master of this deceptive trap. A bee gets lured in by that bright, pouchy flower, crawls inside looking for food, and finds nothing. So it gets annoyed, tries to leave, and discovers the only way out is this tight, one-way tunnel that forces it to first brush against the part that receives pollen and then against the part that gives pollen. It's just a brilliant mechanical trick. But it's not all deception. Let's look at the western prairie-fringed orchid for a second. This incredible plant has a totally mutually beneficial relationship with sphinx moths. It only releases its fragrance at night to attract them, and then it rewards them with a deep well of nectar hidden in these long spurs, which only the moth's super long tongue can reach. It's just a beautiful example of coevolution.
Okay, so now that we know how they live and reproduce, let's take a look at where they live. The distribution of Canada's 77 orchid species, it's not even, not at all. There are very clear patterns and some definite hotspots of diversity.
When you look at the data, a clear trend just jumps out at you. Ontario is the undisputed champion, with a staggering 62 native species. As you move west or north from there, the number generally drops. But what's really amazing to me is that even in the far, far north, Nunavut is still home to 13 incredibly hardy species. This pattern is what biologists call a latitudinal gradient, and the contrast is just stark. Down south, the warmer, more diverse habitats of Ontario support this huge number of species. But way up north, the harsh Arctic conditions mean that only the absolute toughest of the tough can survive. To put that southern diversity into perspective, let's just zoom in on a single hotspot. Ontario's Bruce Peninsula alone is home to an astonishing 44 different orchid species. So what makes it so special? It's the unique geology. Limestone bedrock right at the surface creates these rare habitats called alvars, and those conditions make the peninsula one of the most important orchid sanctuaries on the entire continent.
But this incredible specialization, it comes at a price. The very things that make orchids so fascinating, their super-specific relationships with fungi and pollinators, also make them incredibly vulnerable. And that delicate balance is now facing some really serious threats.
A lot of our native orchids are now officially listed as species at risk. The western prairie-fringed orchid, for example, is endangered because agriculture is converting its prairie habitat. The small white lady slipper is threatened because we're draining its wetland home. And the super-rare small world pogonia is being squeezed out by habitat loss, some of it from ATV trail.
This quote from a federal assessment report makes the threats startlingly clear. For the small whorl pogonia, the dangers are both direct, like habitat getting torn up by recreational vehicles, and indirect, like the possibility that invasive earthworms are changing the soil itself and disrupting those essential fungal partners the orchid absolutely needs to survive.
So it really boils down to 3 core challenges. First, just straight-up habitat loss. That's the biggest one. Second, their symbiotic lifestyle is a double-edged sword. You lose that specific fungus or that specific pollinator, and the orchid population is doomed. And third, climate change is creating instability, and we're starting to see a timing mismatch where flowers bloom before their pollinators have even emerged.
But it's not a hopeless situation. Far from it. Protecting these botanical treasures is a major focus for conservationists, and it requires a multi-pronged approach that involves government, scientists, and, well, all of us.
The conservation effort really works on 3 main levels. At the top, you've got legal protection through Canada's Species at Risk Act. On the ground, national and provincial parks are actively managing habitats to support orchid populations. And, maybe most importantly, public education is key to building the awareness and the sense of stewardship we need to make a real difference.
And that brings us to the final thought. These 77 species are a unique and fragile part of our natural heritage. Their complex lives, hidden just out of sight in our forests, our prairies, and our tundra, are this incredible testament to the intricate beauty of nature. So the question for all of us is, as stewards of this land, what role can we play in making sure these wild jewels continue to thrive for generations to come?